Welcome to the AI breakout session. It's my pleasure to introduce Iftikhar. I've known Iftikhar for 9 years now, and he's doing some really great, interesting things with AI. So we thought we'll have a generic AI conversation around AI in the mortgage marketplace. So first question, Iftikhar, are you ready? Yeah. Will AI actually take over the role of a mortgage broker?
No is the answer, but at the same time, you need to start using AI, because otherwise other brokers will start taking over your role. We can see that happening. I work with a lot of clients, and I'll give you some examples to show you. I worked with a broker firm who had 3 mortgage brokers. They were doing about 45 cases a month. Today they have 2 brokers because one of the brokers left. They're still doing 45 cases a month because they use AI to help them with all their admin work. So you're still the broker, you're still advising, but all of your work, the admin work, you can sort of outsource to AI. And that's happening. And I also work with another broker firm. He came to me about a year ago and said, I do about 20 cases a month, and I'm looking to get an admin. I said, you use one of our systems that we use? I said, try it and see. Today he has 40 cases roughly that he does on average a month, and he still hasn't recruited an admin. So that's helping those brokers. So it doesn't stop there, but what's happening is the clients that use them go back and tell their friends that, look, I no longer have to fill detailed forms. I no longer have to send so many documents out to brokers. So that process has become much simpler. So it's helping the brokers to get those referrals. And we as brokers, we know referrals is the king, right? Because otherwise you spend a lot of money on Google or whatever sources to get those in. But they are seeing that success. So yes, it's not going to replace the broker. And FCA is still pretty clear on that as well. The advice has to come from the broker. But it is definitely helping brokers to shine. And that's what's happening in this space.
Perfect. I think I'll speak for myself. There's lots of people probably at the conference today who haven't embraced AI yet. And for those kind of brokers and myself who feel a bit left behind, where do you think would be the best place to start?
This. It has to start with this. It actually has to start today, in my view, right here and right now. Because if you haven't started on AI, you're already behind. So the reason I said this is, today there's enough lenders, providers out there who will give you this for free, right? Obviously, this is not from a lender. I just brought this to show you. But this is where it starts. If you want to start and embrace AI, the best thing to do is to put all your objectives down. Say what you want to achieve in the next 5 years. Break it down into the next 5 years, next year, and the next 3 years. Write everything down what you want to achieve. Do you want to be a network? Do you want to grow by, say, 100%, 50%, whatever it is? You want to reduce your hours? Put all your objectives down. And then what you need to do is you need to put all your frustrations down, right? What drags you back? What holds things back? You know, things like, let's say, analyzing a bank statement. If that's a frustration, put that down. And think about things that, the repetitive stuff that you all do, put that also down. Write everything down in the book. And what I want you all to do next is go to ChatGPT. Please invest £20 on a pro account. That will make a world of a difference. You can create something called your own GPT. Some of you may know, some of you may not know. Create your own GPT and put all these objectives, your frustrations, and your issues down. So once you've done that, you can come up with a 5-year plan using ChatGPT. But remember, you're the driver still, right? Because AI will give you some guidance. You can challenge what AI is telling you, because sometimes it will give you a generic answer. But you can convert that into something called a project or a canvas thereafter. I mean, again, I'm happy to explain to you after this conference as well. And you can break it down, and break it down by divisions as well. Like if you're planning to have a small network, right? you can have the HR function. If you want to do marketing, like things like on social media, break it down as well so that it will give you a plan. Now, ChatGPT tells me every single day what I'm supposed to do. It tells me, right? And I challenge it as well, and my objectives can change. I call it my thought partner. That's what I call it, right? I call it Cypher. I actually used to call it Jarvis, right? But everybody uses Jarvis, so I thought, it doesn't look very cool, right? So I call it Cypher. So you create your own thought partner, and then you can break it down into how you're going to sort out these issues, like HR issues. And because a lot of the time people just go and buy tools, like, and about this. Don't waste too much time and money on those things. You need to know what your objectives, what your plan to achieve. Once you know that, then if you have to reach out, then you can go and look for tools. Yeah.
I think you kind of touched on it a little bit already, but what are the first steps for people to bring themselves up to speed with AI?
I think, again, let's start with the book, come with the objectives, and then once you've done that, then it's probably best to start looking at tools, right? I think everybody should invest in something like a LLM, like a large learning model like ChatGPT, Google. Again, it's your preference, right? I use three. I use ChatGPT. I use Google. I use Google a lot. And also I use Perplexity, because Perplexity does a lot of research. So I think that's the starting point. You all don't have to invest in that, right? Just pick one. Just get comfortable and try to work on things like zero code first before you go and buy tools, right? Because sometimes you can ask ChatGPT, how do I create an AI agent? It'll give you a guidance. It'll give you the guidance on how to do it, right? So that's probably where you need to start.
Yeah. I'm just picking up on that. You said about zero code. So obviously I've been at your conference of the future this year. So I kind of know what that means. But for the rest of us, what do you mean by zero code?
You don't need to be a developer. Zero. That's what I mean by this. I am not a developer, right? I mean, I used to shy away from IT. When people talk about development side, I used to run away. But I thought, look, I need some change, right? And because I was getting bogged down in my work, right? I used to handle 30, 40 cases a month alone, right? And it just became too difficult, right? So AI became my companion, my help. I'm sharing my thoughts. That's why I'm sharing my thoughts. Obviously, I've developed some products as well. But zero code is where you don't need code. I'll give you a basic example. Like, this is why I love Google, because Google has an ecosystem. You got Gmail, you got calendars, you got maps, you got the whole works, right? So that's why I call it an ecosystem. Today, if there's a lead that comes through overnight from my website, it populates the Google Sheet, right? So these are all zero code, right? Automatically, an email goes out to a customer saying, thanks for your inquiry. And if it was referred from another introducer, they get an email as well saying, thank you for introducing this client. I did not do anything. So that's zero code. So then what happens next is I have an AI who will call that customer and who will verify that customer to see whether that's somebody that you can work with. Because you get leads, right? And out of the leads, sometimes 50% of them you can't work, right? But just imagine if you spend 1 hour on a phone call or half an hour, and then at the end you realize this is not a customer for me. You wasted 30 minutes of your time. But my AI will call and they'll verify. But it's all sort of zero code. So that's what I'm saying. You don't need to be a developer to do this anymore. The space is changing a lot. There is a lot of guidance that ChatGPT themselves have on how to do this. Google, Gemini, they have their own guidance. But of course, if you want to talk to me, please feel free. I'm happy to share my thoughts, right? Obviously, I'm here all day. Just leave me a business card or take mine. If you want to get in touch, I'm happy to help you with the starting points, right? Because I learned this journey, it was difficult for me because I learned it myself, right? Of course, today I have developers, but a lot of the things I still do it zero code myself, right? But I'm happy to share those thoughts with anybody else who is interested.
Thank you, Iftikhar. So you often talk about the 90-10 rule when it comes to AI and brokers. What exactly does that mean?
Okay, so I'm sure most of you are familiar with the 80-20 rule, right? So most of you all will be familiar with the 80-20 rule. people who know me very well. I like to push the boundaries, right? So I kind of did it. I'm saying, okay, you can do 90-10. So what I mean by 90-10 is 90% of what you do today, AI can do. Unfortunately, it can do better as well, right? So that's the way I like to think. Now, yesterday, I'm mentoring this lady. I was here in Birmingham. I was in her office. I said, let's go through the process map. When I went into her office, she had a process map actually drawn on the wall. And I looked at it and said, what's this? And she goes, oh, you wanted the process map. It's on the wall, right? But I showed her that almost everything there AI can do. And AI can do it better as well. I'm not saying go and do everything overnight, right? That's not what I'm saying. Start by one. The ones, as I said, come up with your objectives and see which ones you want to handle first. But AI can take away most. But always remember, you're the broker. People come to you because you're the broker. Advice is from you, right? So you can use these tools to help you, but still, they come because of you. They're not coming because of AI, right? So that's the most important thing. That human element is still very, very important in our space. Otherwise, they can go to the bank, right? That's why they come to you.
Perfect. Probably my favorite question today. There are hundreds of AI tools out there. As a broker, which ones are actually worth using day to day, and what benefits do they offer in terms of saving time?
I'd say start with the LLM anyway, right? ChatGPT, Google Gemini. My favorite, I do a lot of research, Perplexity, right? You don't need to buy all three. Start with one. The most generic is ChatGPT because they help you with a lot of things. Google, I love Google because, like I said, it has this ecosystem, right? So you probably want to start there. And again, if you want to do things like research, I write a lot of articles, I do research. Perplexity helps, right? So that's why I invest in that. But if you are not doing that, please don't waste your money. But then, again, coming from your objectives, whatever you want to achieve, right? So if you want to help you with something with marketing, right? So there might be tools out there. But when you select tools, just make sure, right, as much as possible, it's broker specific, right? So I use a tool called Colibri, right? I don't use Zoom anymore. I don't use Teams anymore. I use Colibri. So what Colibri does is when I go into a call with a customer, it gives me, let's say, a first-time buyer, it gives me 25 questions to ask. It's on the side, right? It's already popping up. So when I have that conversation, the customer doesn't see that. The 25 questions will become 24, 23, 22, 21. And it doesn't stop there. The next time I have a conversation, it reminds me of the previous conversation. So the soft facts, right? So I ask, so how is your son X and how's your cat doing? You know, last time I spoke, you said you had to go to the vet, right? So all those things, when you tell that to a client, they're like, this guy remembers these things, right? That's how you build that relationship. So that's what AI is doing for me today. So that's a specific tool built for mortgage brokers, right? Which I use. So look at tools like that, because you have to sometimes be careful. Again, I spoke about ChatGPT. You have to be careful what information you put in and where it goes as well, right? So because these broker-specific tools, they are generally ring-fenced, right? It's ring-fenced. That's what you need to make sure. Because sometimes this information goes to ChatGPT and you're compromising, right? That's something that you don't want to do and brings back other information, right? So you need to make sure that it's ring-fenced and it's protecting you, because you as a broker have that responsibility, right? So to make sure that you don't compromise on those. So that is a tool I use. But then we can do things like videos. I used to do HeyGen videos, right? Because I do a lot of social media. Somebody asked me, how many videos have you done so far? I think it's over 1,000, right? I do a lot of social media stuff as a broker, as AI stuff. I talk about that as well. So, sometimes it's not practical for me to do the video. So things like HeyGen you can use. Again, like I said, let's look at the objectives. If you need help, just ask me, I'll tell you. Because I test a lot of these tools, right? Because I love doing it, I test it, right? And sometimes I say, why are you wasting your time on this when ChatGPT can do the same thing, right? Sort of thing, right? So, so if you all need any help, please reach out, and if I can help, I will, right? So there are those smaller tools that you can use. Again, it depends on what you want to achieve, right? So for example, I recruit these days because we have obviously I have a broker firm as well. We are recruiting these days. So I use a HR tool. So whatever CVs that come through our portal is automatically sort of scored. And I have a score, right? Whoever gets more than 70% pass mark, that person qualifies for an interview. And I don't do the interview either. That interview is done by HR, the first interview, right? Obviously, I need to see the person, right? But it avoids all those, me having to recruit a HR person or recruit, I don't know, a recruitment firm getting involved. So it helps with things like that, right? So again, that's why I said it depends on your objectives. If you are stuck with tools, because there's so many hundreds there, right? Just ask me, I might be able to help, or if somebody else knows, check with them, right? Because all these tools are expensive and it adds up in terms of cost. You don't want to be spending money because, very easily 20 pounds, 30 pounds, before you know it, you're spending 300-400 pounds on tools, right? So just be careful what you're investing. But start with the objectives, right? That's the key thing.
So I'm just very conscious of some compliance managers sat in the front row, so this leads very nicely into my next question. AI can be a powerful tool, but there's always a question of data and privacy. What are the key security risks brokers should be aware of, and how can they stay compliant?
Again, I've had conversations with FCA because I run this company, MortgageX, as well. We had to verify certain things. I've spoken to various consultants as well on this subject, right? So please feel free to speak to your compliance teams on this as well, get their views. FCA still says the advisor is you, right? The buck stops with you, right? Let's put it that way, right? So you can use whatever tools you want in the background, but you need to make sure that you still give the advice, right? So that's very clear. And the second thing is they are worried about data privacy. They are also worried about customer confidentiality. So don't compromise on that, right? I mean, you shouldn't be doing that anyway. You don't need FCA to tell you that, right? So I've heard brokers telling me that, I put a credit file on ChatGPT and it tells me whether this customer is good or bad, right? Don't ever do that. You're compromising on information, right? I know there are people who are doing it, right? So some people even upload their bank statements because they analyze that, right? Yeah, that's what I'm saying, right? I know again, this is what people do. So you should never do that, right? You can, even ID today, you can verify on, LLMs, right? So don't compromise on that, right? So just completely stay away from that. Also, remember, people come to you because you're a broker, right? And they expect you to be professional. So if you're using AI, you need to tell them, right? So our company terms always say, look, we use AI for processing. And we have a duty to tell the customer as well that we use AI, right? So this is what we use AI for. And they might have a further question, does this go to ChatGPT sort of, right? So you should be able to answer saying, no, we don't use ChatGPT for that. Or, again, depending on what you do. But, so that's the important thing, right? So you shouldn't be doing that. And the most important thing is, end of the day, you are the broker, right? People come to you because you're the broker. So again, I'm going back to my 90-10 rule, right? The 10% is always you, right? That's the 10% you cannot outsource, right? That is your advice, that is yourself, and everything to do with you, what the customers come and pay you for. That you cannot compromise, right? You have to always retain that. But the admin stuff, which takes most of the time of the brokers, right? If you actually put that process map down, you will realize as well. Most of them can be outsourced through AI today. And AI can do a lot of those stuff better. But use common sense as well, right? So for example, there are tools which can analyze a bank statement. Nothing to do with ChatGPT, like specific mortgage broker tools. Those, like when you get answers, take a look at that and bring your common sense to it as well, right? Because AI, I think, works very well 99% of the time. There can be a 1% it doesn't work as well, right? Because again, AI is evolving. It will keep changing and it'll get better and better and better. It's not a question that whether it's happening. It is happening. It's already happened, right? But you sometimes have to use a little bit of common sense as well, right? It's a bit like you asking ChatGPT something. Whatever answers you get, if you could just copy and paste that, it's a very generic answer, right? But you're the professional. You need to make sure that you use your skill in that as well.
So look, we'll end it there. We did have a couple more questions, but what I would say is Iftikhar has a stand in the main hall. So you have any questions? Obviously, he's going to be back in here again in 5 minutes' time, so no time for us to grab a coffee, Iftikhar. And we're going to be doing the same session again, but feel free to go and have a chat with him at his stand. 100% recommend following him on LinkedIn. There's always hints, tips, different uses for AI on there. And I think, again, just the crucial message here is, AI is fantastic. Use it to your advantage. Customer data, absolutely keep protected at all costs. Thank you for joining us, guys. It has been recorded, so if you want to pick up on anything, let me know, or let one of the TMA team know, and Iftikhar will happily send it out to you all. But thank you for joining us. Cheers.
Thank you.